Yo, guys, it's your boy FGC Chris, and we definitely have an interesting video here today. This is from a YouTuber, Mike Hollow. I'm gonna try to put his information down below so you can go check out the full live stream. I'm only gonna take this little bit of this little part right here because if you don't know who this guy is, right here on this side, this is MK Tom Brady, a EC champion. I can't ECT champion. He's won a couple more tournaments. Big time player in the Mortal Kombat scene for years. Uh, he had a lot of interesting things to say about the tournament scene and younger players coming in and the financial situation within the FGC. And it's something that I've kind of always been thinking about, but I never really, you know, could really put it into words. But Tom Brady pretty much summed up everything I had been thinking since I've gotten into the FGC and been more around it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into it. Let Tom speak. I'm not gonna try to interrupt the video too much because it is 28 minutes long. So let's go ahead and get into it. And shout out to Mike Hollow for allowing me to use this video. I contacted him and he had no problem with me using his content because most people will flag you if you use their content without their permission, but he was cool enough to say he didn't care one way or the other. So shout out to Mike Hollow. Appreciate you, bro. So let's go ahead and get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it.
yeah.
See what
So
Tom
I
say.
see this a lot today, and it breaks my heart where I see like younger kids on Twitter, um, and they just, they're talking about they were at a tournament, how they're not making any money. Uh, yeah, I saw actually even back in MK11, the Chilean twins, they're very young. They traveled, all the way to Combo Breaker in Chicago. They traveled to Evo multiple times, and they were just talking about the money they were making, and it's like this is what it costs and this is what we make, so everything's at a loss. And it just seems like a lot of the younger generation is really disillusioned that because we hear the term all the time,
Mm.
pro fighting game player, right? If fighting game players are professionals, it is the worst profession in the history of mankind. I think they're a little disillusioned, and they live this way as if the FGC was kind of outside of the bubble of like the real world. And then they
Yeah.
start turning 27, 28, 30. And then the reality is, and you have always said like, hey, look, you do your YouTube stuff and your fighting game stuff as a hobby, right? This is not paying your bills. You do it because you love it. And fighting games used to be that way, but now people started taking fighting games as I'll be a pro streamer or a pro player, etc. And there's just certain realities that I don't think have really sunk in, on the community, if you will.
Is that the do you
And that's one of the things I think is huge is that if these are supposed to be pro players and people who are trying to aspire to be pro players, then there I've been in the scene for since 2019 and I've honestly looked around and I'm like I don't really see how you can make this into a profession where you can have consistent money coming in and basically live off of just playing and winning tournaments. But Tom's gonna keep going. Let me get Tom go because he's cooking right now.
extend that sentiment to content creators as well, or is this just about pro players?
I think content creators have destroyed the FGC in a certain manner. There are players like yourself who you say, hey, I can say whatever I want. These ain't paying my bills. So
Right,
I'm going to
not
give you
paying
my
my bills,
opinion
so I can say
as it
what I
is
want to
because
say.
your income, how you live, the life you want to live is not bound to the revenue you make on your YouTube channel or your streams.
Mm.
So you can give your real thoughts and opinions. But however, there are people that do their content is how they make a living, which is fine. The problem is their living is based on the success of that particular game. So even if you're a tournament organizer online, for example, if you are holding it on, it's ironic that the people that hold online tournament leagues, not the big ones, they can do it full time, but the players can't play full time because they can't afford it. You know what I mean? Because like
Mm.
the people, you know what I'm saying? Evo, the most successful fighting game tournament ever, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The people that run Evo make enough money to do that full time. The pro players who attend and win Evo don't make enough money to play full time. You see my point? So let's just say you have an online tournament league, hypothetically speaking, and you quote unquote bring the hype, or whatever the hell that means, right? And you are um, your income is tied to that.
Hmm.
Your sponsorships is how you make your money, right? You're making whatever it is, how many thousands of dollars in sponsorships, correct? You know what I'm saying? So then you bring in um, you got these sponsors coming in. If there's an issue with the game and the community's talking about it, like, hey, these are issues, these things have to get done, these things have to be addressed. Well, obviously, you as a major, like you have a major audience, you could say, like, hey, this is an issue. We're not retaining some of the players. A lot of people are kind of jumping ship. But then you're not going to get very money from sponsorships if you're telling them that the product that they're putting money into is not very good. So
Yeah.
you have these tournament league organizers and these content creators telling you that this game or game, quote unquote, whatever games it is, are the best thing to ever live. Best MK11, best game ever, or whatever game it is. It could be Tekken 8, could be whatever, right? Because their income directly is on that game. Asking me for money. I didn't want that call anyway.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah, I had to make some cuts because ads
people
kept popping
are
up.
bound to that particular product. So it's kind of tough because the content creators, because their income is solely based off it, are just bound to be not really give their true thoughts. They've got to say what they have to say to make their money, which is fine. But as players, you have to realize the FGC is literally rigged to make sure that the players' income is there's just not enough money for the players and the organizers, right? To there's just not enough money in it. So the problem is the least amount of money goes to the players, and there's just not enough money to really for anyone to really be eating good, so to speak, right? Now there are
So would
people
you
like
would you say that the content creators, so when you're saying that because there's not enough money, so they have to sort of push it as being a good game, so that they continue to get people watching, or the people reaching out to them to like do either like ad reads or like go out to tournaments. So you're saying that a lot of these content creators can't be trusted for that reason?
And that's one of the big things that I noticed when it came in the scene is that as big as these tournaments are, CEO, all these tournaments, it's like the prize money that you win from them is not that much. Because once you take taxes out on it, it's like you're not even really getting if you're not even getting half of what you basically won. So it it's one of those things where it's just like I don't see where you're getting the money, and that has been the main complaint of so many players is that money, money, money. We need more money, more money. That's why they're complaining so much about how Capcom's doing the Capcom Pro, the Capcom Cup with the $1 million, and that the seeding's not fair, and this and that, and Brian F's like we need to change this. Like the pro players wanted more slanted in their favor, if anything, from my perspective, when it comes to the Capcom Cup. They wanted more so slanted. Oh, now you got to go to all these tournaments to get points so you can get better seeding and this and that. When basically Uma won that tournament, the first $1 million tournament, and he walked away, he pretty much took the $1 million and walked away from it. And I don't believe because he's not a pro player. He's a really good player, but I don't believe he was a pro. So to them, it's like, dang, we should have got that money. So now all of a sudden, we need to alter how the CPT functions, and you've been seeing that a lot lately. But let's get back into it.
100%. Well, there are some that can, some that can't. Like for example, if you're how we have several people who their content is not so much watching them play, but they hold tournament leagues, things like that, right? Those type of
Mm.
people. Well, their income is basically based to the success of that particular game. You have people like Main Man who has his own audience, right? So he's going to make whatever, whether he's Tekken, whatever, because he has his own audience, right? They're not so much Tekken fans; they're fans of the personality.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's not possible to be successful, but when your income is tied directly to the success of a game, you haven't developed your own whatever. Your thing is we hold tournaments for this game, or my content is kind of based on that game. And there are very few people actually are able to, once they associate with a particular game, find it difficult to branch out to something else, because then they lose a big part of their audience. It's not easy to make a jump like that and retain people. So a lot of these content
Facts.
creators, really, they just can't be trusted more times than not, as long as when their income is tied to the success of the game. And that's
Mhm.
another kind of downfall to money in fighting games. you know Again, even if you can be successful content creator for a little bit, if the studio decides that they're done with that game, we're not making it anymore, or the next version of said game is going to come out many years down the line, and you end up losing the audience that you have on YouTube or Twitch, whatever, simply because the game falls out of favor or the next one's a terrible product. There's just The FGC is just a lousy way to make a living. It's a passion thing.
Definitely. It's
um,
definitely a
People always
passion
bring up Sonic
project.
Fox's name. I've got news for you. Even Sonic Fox in gaming is unsustainable. He would
Mm.
have to, I'm not saying he's not had to have been wise with his money, because when young Fox is old Fox and 45 and 50 and no longer the dominant force that he is, or maybe he's just tired of it, his passion is gone, right? I've been winning for God knows how many years. I want to move on to the next chapter in life, right? I'm not saying he won't be successful as long as he's wise with his money, invested well, and chose a different career path. But in being this dominant tournament winner, eventually that part of your life always ends. But then you still have to live for the next 40 or 50 years of your life. The
Mm.
FGC just doesn't really, even someone that, whoever won the Capcom Cup, right? He won $1 million. You
Listen
have
to
to
what he's
understand, when
saying.
that check gets cut to you, whatever country that foundation is based on, they're going to take their tax out before that check comes to you, right? I remember when World Cyber Games was a thing. It was based in Korea. I think that tax was 33%. So let's hypothetically say back in those days, you won $1 million. You were taxed 33. I'm saying that was the case for Capcom Cup. By the time you got that 1 million, you had 670,000. So let's just say maybe you got 700 to 670,000, right? 650,000 of that million comes to you after tax. If you live in America, the average home is 420,000.
Mm.
If you want to keep that money may, if you did nothing else, that money may get you through the next 5, maybe 10 years of your life. Let's say you win it at 25 years old. At 35 years old, that's 670. And if you were not wise with your money and continue to find some career, or were able to continue to win, which is not the easiest thing in the FGC, you're now broke. That money's gone. Also, the FGC and how it's paid out is also very weird. One tournament could be $1 million. I guarantee you the next main tournament after the Capcom Cup was not even close to $1 million. You
Mm.
literally have to
Mm,
train to
mm.
beat the same people for $1 million, and then when you beat them, you only get 5,000, because unfortunately today was not the $1 million tournament. You see what I'm saying? One tournament could be a $100,000 pot. The next tournament could be it's only a $5,000 pot, because $10,000, five of that goes to the top eight, five of that goes to the winner. So it's like I still had to sacrifice and put in just as much time to beat these same people who were around for a tournament for $100,000, $200,000. And now I win, and you're telling me my payout is 5,000? FGC is just not set up to be sustainable monetarily. And you
What
would
would
think
you
this is
say?
common
What
knowledge,
would
but
you say?
And I've been saying that for the longest time. When I looked at the scene, I love the FGC. I love the scene, but I'm like, where's the money? I'm like, I don't see how you can sustain yourself on just FGC tournament stuff alone. That's why you see a lot of these FGC creators either getting into content creation or they streaming, and they're constantly pushing subs. Hey, sub to my channel. Hey, coaching. Hey, I'll pay you can pay for guides and all this other stuff. Like, because just tournament stuff and money in the FGC is just like Tom said, it's just not enough to go around. And eventually we have to kind of get to that point where we have to realize that.
Say what would you say is the best route for someone in the FGC to take? Like, we
Listen to what
established
he
that it's
said.
not
If you're gonna
sustainable as
do
a
this,
whole.
listen to what Tom
But
said.
if you were to take a particular route to make as much as possible for the longest period of time,
Because
what
he's gonna
would
break
you
it down
say
what
is
you
the
need to
best way
do if
to
you
go?
want to make this your career.
Best way to go about it is understand how money works. For one, if you have decided I am going to be an FGC thing, that's my thing. I'm going to be a content creator, and I'm going to be like all this stuff. What you would, or I'm going to be a tournament player. The first thing you'd want to do is probably to form your own LLC. Uh, this allows things like traveling to tournaments to be a massive write-off. You then, as an LLC, get the same write-off privileges as any successful business. You are 1099 anyway as an FGC, whatever you are. So whatever it gives you certain tax breaks. The next thing I would do is, if you're trying to, you mean make as much money as possible,
Mm.
realize that tournaments are the worst form of income. Like, tournaments are going to be the least form of income. The formula is basically go to a tournament to get your name out, and then use that to make as much money. So if you were to make money in FDFGC, you would want to go to a short amount of tournaments just to get your name out as a top player, and then stay online for the rest of the time. Who cares about entering offline tournaments, because you can enter the online ones? You've already established yourself as the name that is a quote unquote good player. So your brand is there, and then you can still uphold yourself as a top player by entering online tournaments. You save yourself the travel. Only travel when a tournament is big enough, not even to win money, but that your name will have some relevance. A lot of people, you want to only go to tournaments that have the most eyeballs, not for money. This is a major tournament. Just realize you're probably going to lose money. However, the money you spent to go there is not a loss, because you're your own LLC. You write that off at tax time. See my point? So you
Hmm.
only select maybe 3 or 4 major tournaments a year for your own name recognition, to keep it there, to keep yourself in the top 8. If you only get fifth, who cares? You knew you were going to lose money anyway. You weren't dependent on winning. However, your name is in the top 8. It allows you to go the rest of the year of still playing on online tournaments, etc. That is how you keep your name. That is how you keep your branding, which in turn gets your money into YouTube and Twitch streaming. And you have to know probably how to maximize your audience there. As far as the truth of the matter is, YouTube is going to be significantly more revenue for you than Twitch. And you have to know how well that works. I think most people come into gaming and they don't really have a formula. It's just kind of like, hey, I'll come in, win some tournaments. I started streaming yesterday, you know, but it needs to be a passion project. You have to realize that more than likely you aren't going to make any money from it. The truth is, if you're trying to stream games and play games to make money, don't play a fighting game. If
Mm.
Asmongold chose to be in the FGC as opposed to what he does, he would be broke. Point blank. For money to work, money is distributed based on the pool it's collected. It's like sports, right? In America, you have sports that make big money because the money they have coming in is just more money than a sport that doesn't pay out as much money, right? You only can get a certain amount of money based from the amount of pool that's there. The reason why the FGC is the armpit of competitive gaming is because other games just make more money. If you are, for example, a streamer of like an MMORPG, right, or something like that, like WoW, well, a game like World of Warcraft sells in one day what Mortal Kombat, the most successful, whatever, will sell in 10 years. And that's over
Hmm.
multiple products. MK11, the most successful MK game of all time, what did it sell? 15 a million copies
Mm-hmm.
over, what, 2019 until now, right? What is it,
Yep.
Yeah.
6, 7 years, something like that? What expansion of WoW sold 25 million in a single day? In one day. So those games just have more
Oh
revenue.
man.
There's more people watching those games, more people playing those games. So if there are more people
And
that are buying the
he's
game, there's more
correct,
people that are
man.
watching the game,
That
right?
game, certain
So
games, they
chances are,
sell
if
30, 40 million copies
I
in a
think
day.
the number's got to be like
So
several million to like 10 versus
fighting
how many
games
people
have
play
have
those other games versus a
have
fighting
no
game. So
comparison.
if that audience, if there's a bigger audience of people that are interested in said games, there's a bigger audience of people that will watch said games. Fighting games are just, I mean, compared to how other games are selling, fighting games are actually selling worse than they ever have. Compared to, they're selling better technically than they ever have. But other games, when they start selling better, they're selling 20, 30 million copies in a day. A fighting game takes years, decades to do that.
If
So
it
they're
all if a
significantly
fighting game
further
even
behind these
reaches
other
that kind
games
of
than they've
level.
ever been. So if your goal is monetary,
Mhm.
don't ever play a fighting game.
Do
And
you
if
think
you're
do you think that, like, because there's been people like Mike Ross and Lil Margin who basically did what you said. They appeared in tournaments and they did really well, and then they sort of transitioned
My neighbor Brian was like, "Yo, where'd you get this
I
knife?"
didn't
I'm
cut
like,
them all out,
"Bespoke."
guys. I thought I
That's
cut
what you
all.
talking about,
I
bespoke.
thought I cut all the ads out.
online. Would you would your advice to people to be like to focus on your like networking and like your personality to reach people that way rather than focusing on the game itself?
I would say focus on, yes, for sure. And you have to understand how money works. You have got to prove that you are worth X amount of money. In other words, if your ability to play fighting games, do, the ability to play fighting games is not worth very much money, right? What people from playing and winning a tournament are sitting around millionaires, right? So clearly, your skills as a fighting game player are worth less than nothing. So because of that, how can you market that to anyone? Right? You can't even make that kind of money for yourself. Why am I going to pay you that kind of money?
Mm,
You see my point? If you can't make it for you, you're not going to make it for me. So why are you worth that to me?
facts, bro.
So focus
Facts.
on something that can prove that you are worth money. So it's focusing on yourself and your image over the game itself. Hey, because of me, I command this audience. This audience is worth X amount of revenue in this, that, or that. That's how you actually get sponsors, right? Where you get paid money. Nobody cares about your ability to win fighting games. And look, I'm guilty of this. I fell into the ultimate FGC trap for a long time. Where I wasn't really making much money. I was focused on winning tournaments, etc. So they get you with the old, you can't do it now, quote unquote, right? So you come back, you try to do it again, you make no money, right? And the next game comes out, they say it again. And the real truth, was like, hey, there's really no money in this, and you care what people think when you're flat broke, because that's all you have is what people think. Once you start becoming more successful, you realize, what was I thinking, right? What
Mm.
was I doing? It's terrible. The FGC, you have to just realize you've got to do it because you love it. You have to get into it understanding you're not going to make any money. There is a formula that you can try to do so, but if you rely on that more times than not, you're not going to be successful. I
Mm.
mean, it's just how it is. The FGC cannot be seen as, and it brings a lot of younger players in. I mean, you've seen this many. How many times, Mike, has people said you're saying your opinions because you're trying to make money on YouTube? How often is that said for you about you? People
Yeah.
look at, right. How many times?
Yeah, it happens often. Yeah.
So it's everything comes down to money. It's seen as, well, they're only making you. Mike's only making these YouTube videos and saying these things because he's trying to make money. It's just unfortunate that a lot of younger players kind of get caught up in this dream of being successful monetarily, and they get in the FGC and they realize, well, there's the, like, now, what am I going to do? I can't pay my bills of stuff like this. And they try to do streaming and they try to do YouTubing, but you just don't make enough to live your day-to-day life. It's not really sustainable.
Have you seen it happen personally? Like, do you know players personally that put all their eggs
Dude,
in one basket and
I've
then
been watching the
they went
FGC and
broke or they couldn't pay their
I've been
rent and they were
seeing
in
this
like a tough
junk, dude, man.
situation? Because I
These
know you've
guys
spoken
can't
here
be
before
making
about
that
how
much
you've
money,
given
especially
people
when they're
money when they're in a tough spot.
bunking with
So
each
that
other and got
is this
roommates
conversation
and
coming
all
from a
this other stuff.
conversation that
Y'all,
happened
y'all
elsewhere,
can't be making
which
this
is why
much
you want
money
to
to
speak
be on
about it
your
here, or is
own.
it like personal experiences?
As from personal experiences, as well as I see, in pub, also. But people have hit me up and they use the, like, you don't know. The FGC almost acts like it's a bubble. You know what I mean? Where it doesn't exist within the confines of the real world. And it's very easy when you're 18, 19, or even young 20s to kind of ignore a lot of the things about the real world. But the unfortunate side of life is, you get, whether you have parents that protect you well, or you live at home, whatever. And for the unfortunate side of life is the natural progression of life. Your parents get older, they need help, right? You're now older. How is this going to get taken care of? How is the money side of life is inevitable. And they
Yeah.
get to that point and it's like, hey, look, I need some help right now. For their rent or whatever it may be, or for car problems. And they come to me, and these are people who, at one time were successful fighting game players. or streaming, whatever, and it just, hey, it just doesn't pay the bills, and now they need a little help. But this happens a lot, and I think you're gonna see a movement. It's not as much now because I'm one of the oldest ones at only 47, But as this younger generation gets older, it's gonna very much be like, I guess, you're going to see people talk like, someone who'd left the porn industry. Nobody told me it was going to be this way, right? And they're
Mm.
going to, it's going to, and now I'm 50 and 60 and I thought I was going to make some money, because at the end of the day, people do act like there is money to be made in fighting games. The FGC is so whacked out that you would literally find somebody that makes $500,000 a year would be seen in, well, people will say, well, that person wouldn't play in the stream. Somebody who is successful and maybe gets on a game and gets on someone's stream and gets made just chats like blowing them up, right? And they may say something like, hey, you know what? You still live at your mom's house. Oh, he's so salty, right? He's mad because he has to bring real life into it. If that streamer was he's smart, he'd end the stream and say, hey, I'm broke too. How do I make some money? You know, the FGC almost embarrasses people who leave it because they realize they have to be successful. Well, what do we care about your opinions for? When is the last time you done anything? When was the last time you paid your rent, bro? Who are you talking to? It's tough because no one really mentors these kids. They sell them an illusion. There's no formula. Okay, I want to be successful. How do I do that? Most people come into fighting games as teenagers. They don't even know how money works, and it's not until they're older that they realize I didn't get that monetary success that I thought. You see, the status you can get as being a top player is almost used as currency, right? Within the world of the FGC, right? Doors will open to you because of your status as a top player, right? But eventually, that's not real currency. That's just currency within the realm of the FGC. Eventually, you're not your status is not what it is anymore, and your currency in the real world is nil. So I've seen it happen way too many times, and now I'm starting to see younger kids come into the FGC, and they're like, "How come I?" It broke my heart when I saw the Chilean twins say, "Hey, we spent a lot of money to get to Combo Breaker, to get to Evo. Look what we won." And I
Mm.
remember it was a couple of years back. There was a huge thread on Twitter from like even like Combat was in there, like, "Look, how are we supposed to make any money and like have a living?" And I'm not saying that he relied on that, but he was just one of those people like, how do people expect to make a living off what fighting games pay out? And the answer is they don't. But so many people get into it and then are shocked that they cannot.
So what would you say? Because there was once upon a time when like Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever, like those kinds of games wouldn't have been making the kind of money they're making now. Do you think there's anything that fighting games can do? Maybe not to get to that level, but to get to a point where it's not going from a $1 million tournament to a 5,000. It's more
I honestly don't think there's really too much that the FGC can do to get it to the point where tournaments are basically in the six figures all the time. It's just like Tom said, there's just not enough people. There's not enough people in the FGC pool to warrant that kind of investment from a lot of companies. And to me, it was surprising that Capcom even decided to do the Capcom Cup for a second year for $1 million. But it's one of those things I'm like, okay, how long can they sustain it? But people will tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. The FGC is just growing. We got all these games. Yeah, we got all these fighting games coming out. But at the end of the day, like all the fighting games are kind of cannibalizing each other. Like they're just taking players from this. Oh, I'm tired of playing Street Fighter. I'll go play Tekken. Or I'm tired of playing Tekken. I'll go play Grand Blue. Or I'm tired of Grand Blue. I'll go play City of the Wolves. The the community's not growing the way people seem to think it is. But that's just my opinion on it. I think Tom Brady had a lot of good things to say. I wish I could go through this whole video, but it's already 30 minutes. But you know what? Screw it. We're gonna do the whole video, guys. Let's go ahead. Let Tom finish.
sustainable.
No, because the problem is it just doesn't have the audience.
Same
If
thing I said.
say Mortal Kombat, which is to this point so far been the most successful monetarily franchise, right? But how much money do they really make? MK11, 15 million copies. What does that equate to, right? All the money that comes in, there's just not enough to sustain years. Because see, fighting games start at their peak and then just have a very steady and sharp fall down, right? So a game starts here and there's going to be less interest and less going down. So the arc of a fighting game goes this way. You see my point?
Mm.
Games in general, ARPGs. There are some games that don't because they refresh the game with content that changes everything, right? And expansions that make things like, wow, this is totally different. You can't do that to a fighting game because you'd be overhauling it every single time. And developers think if we're going to overhaul a game every patch, we might as well just do subtle changes and then years down the line make an overhaul and call it the next version of the game.
Yep.
Mhm.
So fighting games, there's just not
MK1
enough money in it. It just doesn't
make a story
appeal
mode and we'll just sell you the
to
whole thing all
enough
over
of the
again.
world. I mean, anytime you have other games that can sell 20 million copies in one day, and a fighting game takes a decade to do it, I mean, there's just not enough money there. There's just not enough. And the FGC is also, it's kind of weird because if you play an ARPG, you are more likely to at least watch several of them or get into them. Whether it's Diablo, PoE, or an MMO type of RPG like WoW, they all have similar elements, right? That will capture you. A shooting game, they all are different in their own way, but they're also similar. You know, and if you can play one shooter at high level, more than likely you can play another one, right? Or even casually. Fighting games are not like that. Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter are so different from one another. MK Street Fighter and Tekken, so different from one another. Street Fighter is popular because they are more similar to a lot of other fighting games. You see my point? So you
Mhm.
can transition from those games to Street Fighter easier, which is why Street Fighter is the king of the viewing. Street Fighter easier, which is why Street Fighter is the king of the viewing audiences, of the most money paid out at tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. But in general, the fighting game has the smallest audience, and then they cut the smallest audience six ways, and that audience doesn't really partake in the other game. So where fighting games, the money is just not there.
Told you.
So
Like,
if that's the
yeah,
case, then, and I'm not making an argument for lying to audiences, because obviously we've both called it out before, but if there's no money in tournaments and there's no money in just like gameplay online or outside of like maybe Maximilian or big content creators, is do you, because you were talking about earlier about not being able to trust a lot of these fighting game content creators, do you feel like they're incentivized by the climate of the FGC and fighting game success in general to lie to make that money if they've gone all in on their channels?
they are, which is why a lot of them attack things with kid gloves.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
How many of these, all of them, each and every one of them, from the ones that have 1 million subscribers to the one that have 500,000. Let's just take Mortal Kombat, for example, during MK11. Best Mortal Kombat of all time, best game ever, blah, blah, blah. MK1 came out, MK11 was terrible. I mean, like, it was tough to stream, tough to play. Thank God for MK1. You just told us for 2 years it was the best game ever. It's it's the net the way negativity is viewed in the FGC is so, even if it's the truth, it's you're being, there is no, this person's straight down the middle, right? Like, as much
Mhm.
as your viewpoints are, Mike, you're just like, look, I'm just telling you what the numbers are. I'm just telling you what the facts are. I have my opinion, but there's also the facts that go along with that, right? But, it's seen as negative. If you literally, I literally watched a video about somebody, and the true underdog and the haters or whatever. It's some of the most obnoxious positivity I've ever seen. But yet you can be as obnoxious as possible in a positive manner, and you are held on people's shoulders, right?
Mm.
Even if it's all wrong, even if it's all selling false hope, it doesn't matter, right? If people make videos all the time to make money about, no, maybe the game is not canceled. Combat Pack 3 news, you've seen it, right? Perhaps not, and that's fine. But if you or me made a video about the game being canceled and it was wrong, they would crucify us, right? So you can make all kind of garbage in a positive manner and it be received well. You can't tell the truth in any matter, right? And that's kind of, they're incentivized to just be over the top positive, even if it's wrong. Sell the dream, even if it's just nothing but a dream, because that's what sells. They basically take from your pockets to line theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, guys, and that's like Tom Brady was cooking, man. He was cooking this whole live stream with Mike Hollow. Like he hits a lot more points and goes in a lot more detail on certain things, but I'm not gonna do that. Go over to Mike Hollow's channel. It should still be up on his live streams. You can watch the entire video. But I just wanted to pull that out because I have been saying this and thinking this for the longest time since I've been in the FGC. And I've had people call me crazy that, oh man, we're getting more people, we're getting more money. And I'm like, there's no way we're getting that the scene is growing in the rate that it needs to grow. The 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 scene is still small. And even though, yeah, we're having a lot of fighting games starting to get put out, it's still pretty much just cannibalizing each other, man. So, man, if you're a fighting game player like me, I do it because I love this fighting games. It's my favorite hobby, but I do it because I love it, not because I want to make money from it. So I'm about like what Tom said. I'm trying to just, you know, have fun with this, make content, and just enjoy myself. But you guys let me know what y'all thought about Tom Brady and what he had to say. Talk to y'all guys later. Peace. I'm out.